Disclaimer: the views expressed on this episode of Perspective Platoon with Prateek are solely the opinions of the host and the guest. The content of the conversation is not reflective of the institutions or establishments mentioned therein. Take all these opinions with a pinch of salt and a dash of lime if needed. Namaskara, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whenever you're watching or listening, and welcome to this episode of Perspective Platoon with Prateek. My guest this week is Najmus Sahar. Najmus and I met through a mutual friend, Aditi, and in that time we've had quite a few interesting conversations, which sort of led to me wanting to bring her on the podcast. In this episode, we spoke about a wide range of topics, as you will see. Ranging from her onion allergies to the concept of soulmates, her learnings from certain books, and so on. And I'm sure that there's a lot that you can pick out from this episode that you can definitely relate to, or that you will definitely find insightful in the sense of a perspective. Um, Firstly, I'd like to apologize for the lag that you will experience or that you will see in this episode, because we did have a few connectivity issues. And secondly, I'm trying out something new with a different recording service. So you will see the video switch from Zoom to a different platform of recording. And from here on out, you will see that platform being used to record the episodes, unless something changes again. But then I'll give you guys a heads up when that happens too. Other than that, I hope you guys enjoy this episode, and without further ado, I present to you Najmus Sahar on this episode of Perspective Platoon with Prateek. Hey Najmus, how's it going?
Doing good. How's it going for you?
It's going all right. It's going all right. I mean, it's a little cold the time that we're recording this on the 6th of February, and they're predicting it to be a
Yeah.
little cooler. So I don't know. Hopefully it's not too cold, and hopefully we can still go out. I mean, it's COVID, so you're not
Oh, I
you're
hope
not
it
supposed
snows
to be going
actually.
out. Oh, you wanted to snow?
Yeah. Yeah, I miss it. It's been a while. For me at least.
Gotcha, gotcha. Well, I mean, it doesn't snow that often throughout the year, does it? Like, I think it only snows like 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, so I feel like I've missed it because back in like my hometown, it didn't snow when it snowed a lot here.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I
So
see. Okay,
yeah.
that's right. That's right. Yeah, 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 yeah. Anyway, before we go further with this snow talk, I'd like for you to introduce yourself. Let the people know who you
Mhm.
are, some of your likes, some of your dislikes, some of your aspirations. If the answer to any of these is I don't know, that's totally fine too. But yeah, go ahead. Introduce yourself to
Okay.
the people.
So my name is Najmus Sahar and I am 22 years old. I'm Indian, I'm Muslim. Let's see what else. I'm a senior at the University of Central Oklahoma. I'm studying biomed science, but I don't really plan to use that degree for anything.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's too late to switch, but oh well. Um, yeah, that's kind of basically it. I really like longboarding though. Longboarding, painting, reading. Yeah.
Cool. What are some things you don't like?
Um, well, the first thing that came to my head was like onions.
Why onions?
Oh, I think I'm allergic. I don't know, like being Indian and allergic to onions, that's not a good combination.
I was about to say because it's a
It's
huge
really,
part. It's a huge part of Indian cooking, right?
yeah, it is. So, I mean, for me, it's easy because I can just leave it out when I'm cooking. But if I go back home, it's
Hmm.
bad. My parents are like, oh, yeah, your onion allergy is psychological.
Yeah, all allergies are, right? All allergies are just psychological.
Well,
It's
they
all in
said
your head.
that. And then they're like, you need to fight your allergy with like onions by eating it. And they forcefully like make me eat it. So I'm like, okay, let me just bring a cat home because I got cat allergies too. But it worked. It worked with the cat.
Did it work with the onions?
I don't know. I kind of just don't like onions, so I'm just gonna say I'm allergic.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Fair enough. How curious are you as a person? Because this is something that I've understood recently is that to sort of learn things, you need to be a lot more curious. So if you
Yeah.
don't mind sharing, like from your personal perspective, how curious do you
Okay.
think are as a person?
I feel like I'm really curious. Actually, I was like thinking about this yesterday, last night. I'm
Hmm.
like, why am I so curious? Because like curiosity kills the cat. You know how people say that. I'm like, that's why I keep getting into like situations sometimes, and like
Hmm.
that's why I have so many stories, I guess, too, as well. But like in the present, I feel like I'm super curious, and I have to find out like how something is in order to like base a perspective about it or like an opinion.
Mm.
So I'm always like up to trying new things. I'm like, what could like my talent be, you know? Like do I have a natural talent? So I'm curious to try new things out until I feel like, yeah, this is it. But for that, you also need a lot of patience, to be honest. Like, uh, if you don't have patience and you're like curious, then you're not going to want to be curious, you know? Does that make sense?
Yeah, because I think like if you lack that patience, you probably are gonna get tired of being curious because you're
Yeah.
like, I'm not getting what I want to get out of this. I want to move
Yeah.
on, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like I don't think it keeps you in there if you lack that sense of patience. So yeah, that does make a lot of
Yes,
sense.
exactly.
And I don't think it's something that we think about as much, but now that you mention it that way, I think it's something that definitely matters in terms of being curious, is to also be patient.
Yeah.
And I guess like another way of putting patience could be consistency. Like you sort of have to keep at it and like sort of it's not
Yeah.
like it's not like you read that book. I don't know why I was looking towards the ceiling. I was looking for some inspiration from up there. But
The light bulb?
I'm sorry, say that again.
The light bulb? You were looking at the lights?
Yeah. I was just waiting for something to just
Yeah.
flash. Uh, but you said like you need patience, and like for example, you probably wouldn't have read the entire book if you weren't patient in a way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And actually, I do suffer a lot with like impatience. Like, if I'm watching a show or a movie and it gets really, really like suspenseful, I get
Mm.
really anxious and I'm like, oh no, I have to find out what happens. So I ask for spoilers or I like Google it like while watching a movie. And and then I'm like, yes, now I can sit and watch. And a lot of people get annoyed at me. They're like, no, I'm not telling you what happens. I'm like, do you want me to like die from anxiety? Like I cannot sit through this.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I've heard the opposite a lot more. Is
It's
that
like
people? Yeah. No,
hmm?
go ahead.
Oh, so like I actually forgot what I was gonna say.
Oh, I was just gonna ask, like, because you hear people say that they don't want anything to be spoiled for them, but for you, it's the total opposite. So, like, yeah, that's just interesting. Like, I think that's the first time that I'm hearing somebody say that they get so anxious about the climactic scene that they find out about it even before watching it, which is interesting. Is that
And
something that happens often?
it's kind of like yes, very often. And like I feel like it's selective patience. Like you know how selective hearing is? You choose what to listen to. This one's like selective patience. Like I have to choose what I want to be patient with. Like I'm impatient when it comes to movies and shows, but I'm patient when it comes to like looking forward to like what's gonna happen in life in a way, you know?
Hmm, interesting. Why do you think that is? I'm just curious to know.
Let me think. I feel like it's because movies and books and TV shows are already written. So like
Hmm.
why waste time trying to find out? I don't
Hmm.
know. Even though our book, like our life is technically written too, I feel like,
Hmm.
but we don't have the transcript of it, you know, we don't have the plots or the summary or anything.
Hmm. Hmm. Interesting. There's so many thoughts I'm getting from you saying that. But I think we'll try and break it down one by one. I might lose some of these questions,
Okay.
but it's fine. What I was gonna say was that parallel that you drew between movies and like stuff that's already out there, stuff that you have a full transcript for. You sort of lose patience, but then you're a lot more patient with just everyday life. Because I think it's sometimes the opposite with a lot of us in society in general. You're more like, oh, I'm gonna wait it out. Like I'm not gonna like look at spoilers, or I'm not gonna find out what's happened in the movie. I'm gonna watch it for myself. But then in life, you're like, oh, I want this like right now. I don't know why I started clicking my fingers, but it's like I want it right now kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it can be flipped a lot of the times. And I mean, no judgment in any way. I'm just saying
Yeah,
that
that it's different probably.
yeah, from observation, like from observation of what we see around us, I think a lot of the times it's quite the opposite, where you're like, oh, I want this like right now. But then with movies or with books, you're willing to be patient. So yeah, I just find that fascinating that you look at it that way. uh well well because there's too many questions trying to sort of come out, so I have to streamline it. What is it, according to you, that sort of gives you that outlook on life in general, if that makes sense?
The outlook of life, as in like being patient, or
Yeah, as in being patient.
like,
Yes.
well, I feel like the two main important things in life are like patience and strength.
Mm,
Like, what you really, really need those for anything if you think about it, you know?
mm-hmm,
And if you lack any of those, it kind of gets tough. For patience, you need a lot of strength. And for strength, you need a lot of patience. They both like go like hand in hand.
mm.
And it's basically for anything, like simple task, big task, anything. So those are like the two main important things of life. And yeah.
Interesting. Because yeah, like you said, like to build strength, it takes time, be that through experiences or through reading stuff or so on and so forth. It takes time for you to be able to build strength. It's not like you eat one thing or you type a cheat code like you would on GTA Vice City or whatever and be like, yo, now my strength is at 100%. Uh, so yeah, I think to gain that
Yeah.
strength, it takes
Oh,
patience.
you know what the thing is?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, my bad.
No, go ahead.
You said GTA cheat code, so that reminded me of something. When you use the cheat code, you get what you want, but you get bored really fast. You're like, oh no, now like, what do I do? I
Oh,
have this.
oh, haven't thought about it that way, but now that you say that, for sure, yeah, yeah. Damn. I'm having to go back to like 12-year-old or 13-year-old me who used to play Vice City and just think, how many times did I like turn the game off after typing a cheat code? Um, maybe I'm being over analytical, I don't know, but now that you say that, I'm really curious to know, um, how long we actually stick to playing games if we have cheat codes. Um,
Yeah.
but damn, that's very deep in a weird way, but in a good way. I don't mean to say in a bad way, but in a very good way.
Yeah. Do you remember how many times? What's your estimate like?
I mean, if I failed a mission, I'd get a little angry and then I'd be like, you know what? Screw it. I'm gonna come back and play it
Oh,
later. Because I don't know. There's this helicopter mission where you sort of take bombs and sort of drop them in like a building or something. I can't
yeah,
remember. You
yeah.
remember that? Were you able to finish that mission?
Well, I haven't been like, what I've been doing is just playing like online GTA.
Okay.
So like
Okay.
it's different missions and they do have drug drop-offs. So I have a weed farm on GTA.
Nice.
But for the shipments, it's like you have to drop it on the drop-off spots. without like crashing.
Mm.
And if you have teammates, then they can help you, or they can mess up too.
Mm.
And other players on the map, they get you back too. So I think it's pretty similar to that mission. Is it?
Not quite, I think, from my
No?
memory. Because okay, so here's the thing: I haven't played much of the GTA series. The only series I've played is Vice City. And in
Mm,
Vice City, there is a mission where you have to sort of drop bombs in like a certain place in a building.
mm.
And that is probably one of the toughest missions ever, at least from, again, from a personal sort of experience, if you will. So yeah, I think usually whenever I fail those, I was gonna call it an experiment. It's not an experiment.
You're doing too much science.
Maybe so, maybe so. I'm actually doing some
Um,
research for my
well, I
capstone
mean,
project, but yeah.
oh wow.
Yeah.
Everything's research at this point now.
Right,
Uh,
right, right,
uh,
right. Like how many times I kicked myself out of the game after cheat codes. No, I'm actually really curious
um,
about that now. Like now that you mentioned it, I probably wouldn't know. Like you know, um, I need
and
some
you use the word over analytical. I hold up, I said that way wrong. Over analytical. Did I say that right?
over
Over
analytical.
yes.
Yeah.
That word, yes. So you used that word earlier, and do you think it's bad to be over, the word? I'm gonna mess up again, but yeah, that word. Do you think
Over
it's bad to be
analytical.
that?
Um,
Yes,
Good question. I think it depends. I think that's a bit of a cop out answer, but I think it
it
depends. I
depends.
think it depends in the sense that sometimes, like, if you're trying to dissect the thoughts that people are having and you're sort of trying to analyze that, I think there you can get a little too over analytical because it's not necessarily going to do you any good to just sit down and sort of
Mhm.
think about what other people are thinking about you, while it's very much possible that they're thinking about what you're thinking about them. So, you know,
Wow,
right,
it's like Inception, kind of.
right, exactly. So I think
Mm.
in that sense, like being over analytical from that approach is probably not the best, but I think, um, but a part of us that does need to be like, we do need to be analytical in a way, because if there's something that's not working, you either need to have some sort of the wherewithal to be like, okay, I probably need to stop this, or you need to be sort of strong enough to know or find the flaws within what you're doing. And to find those flaws, you need to be maybe not over analytical, but you need to be analytical um, to find those flaws. Um, so yeah, I
One
think
thing I realized, oh,
uh,
I'm sorry.
no, it's okay. There's a bit of a
One thing
lag,
I
I think, which
realized
is
is that,
why.
yes, yeah, there
Yeah,
is lag.
yeah.
Um, One thing I realized is that like lately I've been over analytical, oh my goodness. Uh,
You can just say analyze. You analyze a little too much.
Analyzing, yeah, okay, yes, good idea. I've been analyzing too much of my childhood like recently,
Mm,
and I've been like thinking of all the little aesthetics that I've taken for granted, like feelings too,
mm,
like the feeling of like being in the garage when it's like summer, when you're like younger and just like looking at the rain, like all those feelings I've kind of set aside in my brain, but recently I've been like trying to revisit them, and it's kind of changing my perspective. Like, oh wow, like life's actually pretty good, when
mm.
you think of stuff like that. So I've
True.
been analyzing a little too much of that stuff.
Well, yeah, I guess. I mean, only you know how much you've analyzed those things. So I don't think it's the right place for me to sort of judge that and be like, oh, you've been
Yeah.
over analytical or anything. Uh, uh, but I think that being aware of some of the things that we already have and being grateful for those is really, I think, is really huge. Um, I mean, this is at the time of recording and probably getting a little too vulnerable, but um, I think it was last week I shared a post on Instagram saying that something about crying, and I also tweeted something about crying to my mom while I was talking to her on the phone, and it was. I'm not trying to make this about myself. I'm sorry if it's sounding like it,
Oh, no,
but
no, it's actually interesting. I love listening.
yeah. So basically, like, I don't know why I started crying when I was telling her something about being grateful for some of the things that we already have in life. Like, we're always in this quest of wanting more. You want more money, you want a bigger house, you want a better car, you want better grades, you want, I don't know, a better phone, you want a better laptop. I mean, those are all very materialistic things, but in general, we're always so sort of fixated on the idea of wanting more that we tend to forget about the things that we already have. And I don't know why. Maybe it was something that just needed to come out. Um, but yeah, talking about that to my mom just got me like crying,
Wow.
and not even like tears, just like ugly crying kind of thing. I was making weird sounds.
Oh man, I bet she's going to say it's because you haven't had like homemade food.
No, she didn't say that.
No,
No, she didn't. She was like, she agreed with me.
no.
But yeah, like, like you said, I think it's we do sort of get lost in the pursuit of wanting more, that we forget about the things that we have. I mean, I don't think it's wrong to necessarily seek more, because I think you want to be better. Um, and like
I
I said,
guess
there's nothing
we
wrong
just
with it.
get blinded.
Mm,
Yes, we just get blinded a little bit by what we want. It's like what we want is the sun, and like if you stare too much into it, then everything around you it gets like dark.
mm,
So yeah.
interesting. Yeah. Um, you're someone who also reads like religious books and spiritual books and things like that. So this is just a question out of like curiosity. Uh, you said, like when you stare at the sun, everything else around you turns dark. Um, do you think that that sense of being grateful for the things that we have, and sort of trying to seek better or trying to seek more, should be more on the path of spiritual growth rather than materialistic growth?
Well, I mean, it could be spiritual if what you're seeking is not materialistic, you know? Like
Mm,
if it's more idealistic or if it's something that like you want to work on for yourself, like inner peace and stuff. Like if you want to like grow emotionally or if you want to grow like with your like mindset, you know? If you want to grow with your mindset, I don't think that's like necessarily bad. It's still spiritualistic. It's not considered really materialistic.
mm.
Did that answer the question or
It kind of did. No, it kind of did. Well, I think what I
okay.
was trying to do was sort of make a
Mm-hmm.
distinction between the two. Like whenever we try to seek, like, because again, like I think sometimes we lose the context of things that we're trying to say. So for example, if I was saying like earlier, if somebody was just to take a clip like 10 years later and be like, yo, Prateek was like, more is not good. Like, be happy with what you
Yeah.
have. And then they take a picture of me in, I don't know, I mean, if God wills, like a big house, who knows? So, like, they're probably going to be like, oh, the hypocrisy.
um,
But yeah, like from that, like basically I was trying to like ask, in terms of separating the two, um
mhm.
because from what I've read, I mean, do you mind, before I like go into that topic, do you mind talking about religion, or is that something that you refrain from talking about?
Oh, I don't mind. I
You don't
don't
mind?
mind at all.
Okay, cool. I don't mind either.
No.
So yeah, like I've recently been reading the Bhagavad Gita. I'm close to finishing the book, but honestly speaking, I don't think I'm going to be able to digest everything until I've read it a few times, maybe even like 100 times, who knows. But so far from what I've read, um, I've sort of come to an understanding that even some of the materialistic growth that you have can be okay as long as it's being channelized into the ultimate goal of spiritual growth. So that's where that question came from about sort of the distinction between the two of seeking spiritual growth and seeking materialistic growth. So, from your perspective of religion and reading books, um, how do you look at that? I hope that makes sense.
So you're basically asking if you're seeking something materialistic, if it's still considered like spiritual
No,
or
so what I was trying, sorry, like this lag, I think is a little bit of an issue, but we'll power through it. Um, what I was trying to say was
Oh yeah, this was a big lag. Wow.
technology. It's fine, we got to work with it.
Yeah.
So yeah, basically, using the materialistic growth that you have
Hmm.
or that you've had to sort of channelize that into spiritual growth. From my understanding of reading the book, again, I might be wrong. For those of you who are listening or watching this, who've read the Gita and are like, no, this is utter BS. It probably is. I I might be wrong, but this is just something coming out of my own perspective from reading the book. So yeah, like I sort of my understanding was even if you're growing materialistically and you're channelizing that towards the ultimate goal of spiritual growth, there's nothing wrong with it necessarily. So like what's your perspective on that? I guess would be a better question to ask.
I feel like I'm on the same page as you about
Mm,
that. That like it's not necessarily hypocrisy, you know?
mm,
Like as long as you find like a way that can benefit you from it. Sometimes you get like too lost with it, but as long as you don't, then there is a way to channel it.
hey, it's me again. Just to mention again that this is where the switch is going to happen to a different recording platform, and I hope you guys like it. If you have any thoughts about it, make sure to let me know in the comments, and let the switcheroo begin. Hey ho. Anyway, you said you like longboarding. I don't know what longboarding is. I might be stupid, but what is longboarding?
Um, I mean, you're not stupid. I feel like a lot of people don't know, but it's like skateboarding, but the board is typically longer and the wheels are bigger. So you can't really do that many tricks like ollies or stuff like that, you know? But you can like cruise. So it's really great for that, like going down hills, but it goes really fast if you go downhill. So do not try that if you're not experienced. And yeah, so it's just like surfing, but on land in a way.
Interesting, interesting. What got you into longboarding?
Um, well, when I was younger, my brother used to skateboard, so I used to try skateboarding too. And my dad would take us to skate parks, and
Mm-hmm.
we just sit there and watch everyone skateboard. I didn't know how to skateboard back then. My older brother wasn't like an expert at it, but he just take us there to like sit and watch. And then whenever I started like skateboarding, I'm like, I wish like it would be smoother for me. And then I saw like I was in a phase at that time. I'm going to be honest. I had like a phase where I was like punk type too, and then like I had one where I was like leaning towards like the hippie side. But in that phase, I was following someone on Instagram, and I remember she posted like a video with her longboard. And I'm like, wow, that looks fun. Let me give it a try. So I ordered one off Amazon for like $80, which is really cheap for a longboard.
Mm.
And I started like going out alone, and I did online high school for 3 years. So during the day, like I could do whatever, work at my own pace. So I would just go and longboard a lot, and I really liked it.
Hmm. Did longboarding give you some sort of peace, like when you went outside and sort of were out in the open? Like, how did it help you from a mental health
Mm,
aspect, if you will? Or how did it help you in general?
in the health aspect, mostly with solitude. That was one of the main like starting points of me discovering like how good solitude feels, you know? Like I just go with my
Mm,
longboard alone, and it would just feel really peaceful, not having to talk. I could just like listen to music or whatever, or sit and just like look at everything. And when you longboard, like the wind, you can feel that too. So like it's just a really good feeling. You're like, wow, like you're just enjoying every minute of it. But health wise, it helped me a lot mentally,
mm,
like with solitude and peace.
What is solitude to you?
For me, it's just like finding time for your own thoughts and for yourself, and a time of like reflection. And it can be like meditation too, in a way, if you do something that's like meditation. But for me, it's simply just like sitting alone somewhere and being with my thoughts.
Mm,
Because like
gotcha.
when you talk a lot to people, you kind of get lost in the world. Like you kind of lose sense of your own perspective and thoughts. And solitude allows you to form your own perspectives on things, helps you find yourself.
Mm,
And I
interesting.
think I
I
recall
like
your
it. I
first
like the fact
podcast
that you share
actually
that.
mentioned, yeah,
No, go ahead.
your
Go
first
ahead. You were
podcast,
saying
I
the
think,
first podcast?
mentioned solitude too. Oh wow, this is
Yeah,
laggy.
yeah. No, it's okay. It's okay. It'll be fine. Like in terms of post production, I'll be able to work with it.
Hmm.
But yeah, basically,
Yeah.
like the reason why I was asking that is because I think a lot of the times, or at least even I've thought this way too. Like, I feel like, oh, you need to share your opinion or whatever to sort of help, or not that, or being open about your opinions sort of helps you understand each other's perspectives. Because sometimes we can get into this bubble of being like the way I think is right and the way you think is wrong. But when we talk to each other, um, you sort of helping each other understand perspectives. And I always looked at it from that sense of, yeah, people should like share their opinions and talk as much, but you do need a bit of that solitude to be able to form your thought processes and form your opinions, if you will, because like blindly following something is not necessarily the best thing to be doing. So yeah, I appreciate the fact that you mentioned solitude, because it's not something that we think about that often, but it's something that we definitely need. um, what other ways do you find
Yes.
solitude
Yeah.
other than longboarding?
Mhm. Feeding geese. I go to the park and I just
Hey,
feed them
great.
popcorn. I hope that's not bad. I hope popcorn is okay for geese. I don't like intend to like ruin their health or anything, but I'll probably have to research if that's okay. And I just like sit
Yeah.
there and feed the geese, and I like watching like other people come to the park. And like solitude, you don't have to technically be alone. Like you can be around other people too. But what I do is I just like sit and observe the other people, and I start wondering, I'm like, like I wonder what their life is like or how their day's been. You know, there's a lot that you don't know about people, and I just sit there and wonder. I'm like, But it's really nice, like, seeing other people
Interesting.
come and feed the geese too. Usually, they're, like, elderly people or people with their kids, and it just brings a lot of peace.
Hmm. It's interesting that you mention solitude doesn't have to necessarily be just you being around four walls or within or not within, but it doesn't necessarily have to be you within four walls. It can be with you around people. Um,
Mhm.
I don't know. This is maybe something that I haven't necessarily thought about myself a lot, but can you find solitude while talking to people too?
While talking to people? Wow. That's actually, I feel like that would be a really advanced thing to do if you can do that. It's like
Hmm.
a new level unlocked, but that is a good question. I feel like if as long as you can be like secure with your own ideologies and perspectives and things, then yes, maybe if you're like open to sharing your thoughts
Hmm.
and all that, maybe it does count as solitude, but I'm not sure actually because it's still so hard to like stop yourself from getting lost with what other people are saying.
Right, right. Yeah, that's true. Because even with meditation, for example, you can't necessarily, or at least what they say in meditation, or what I've heard people say, is that even if you hear a lot of disturbance around you, you need to sort of stay still.
Mhm.
Um, like in a lot of ways, meditation is an act of staying still, be it with your sort of the way that you're seated, or even with your thoughts for that matter. I mean, I'm no way near being an
So
advanced
do
meditator
you
or
think
anything
it's
like that.
like
I've only been doing it. Oh, go ahead.
yeah. Oh, I was going to say, do you think it's a form of self-control? Like when you're meditating and you hear noises, you're just like increasing how much self-control you have.
Sure, yeah, I think that could be one of
Because
the
you
things too.
can, yes.
Yeah, because you were gonna say something.
Oh, because you can like when you hear noise and you're like meditating, you can either choose to like react to it or you can just choose to stay still, like you said.
Hmm. Yeah, because a lot of the things that I've read recently, people tend to say that the the time frame between stimulus and response sort of widens
Hmm.
as you start to meditate, because you give yourself this extra fraction of a second to sort of analyze your next move, rather than letting it be like a reflex, if that makes sense, like the time that you sort
Yes,
of
it
take
does.
between responding to stimulus improves as you meditate, is what I've heard a lot of people say, or is what I've read a lot on Twitter. All hail Twitter. But yeah, that's something that I've read quite a bit, is that meditating definitely helps, or definitely has a role to play in sort of increasing that time gap between you being hit with the
Mhm.
stimuli of some sort and you responding to that stimulus. So it's really fascinating, like how things like solitude and meditation sort of play into those things. And I think it's not one thing by itself. It's like multiple things that factor in to make it a bigger, a cumulative thing. I don't know if that makes sense, but
Yeah,
yeah, I don't
it
think it's just
does.
one
It
thing by
does make
itself.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I just don't think it's one thing by itself. A lot of pieces have to go into the puzzle for it to be entirely formed. For the lack of putting it in a better way, I guess. But transitioning into something slightly different, you mentioned that you also like to read. What are some of the things? What are some books that you're reading at the moment?
They're mostly like religious and spiritual books. And the current one I'm reading is called The Stories of the Prophets, Peace Be Upon Them. And they're basically like stories about the prophets, like the name says, but there's like a lot of references to the Quran and it helps me like tie the two together in a way. And I can like know what the verse was about from the Quran. I'll be like, oh wow, this story goes with this verse, and it's helping me understand that more. And one of my favorites book is 40 Rules of Love, and I feel like that book did change my perspective on a lot of things.
Hmm. Do you like so far in reading those religious books and spiritual books, just to sort of touch back on that topic of solitude? Um, was there something that sort of added to that perspective in terms of your opinion and your feelings about solitude?
What exactly like do you mean? Like when you say that, I kind of got lost in the
Because I think,
question.
oh no, yeah, I was about to say if that made sense or not. It probably didn't, but I think solitude is something that comes up a lot. Uh, it comes up a lot
Mhm.
in terms of spiritual activity, if you will, or spiritual growth. So I was just curious to know if that's something that you came across in your reading of the book about the prophet or the other books that you've read.
So I hope I answered this right, if I understood correctly, but um, like reading books, it kind of did help with like the solitude. If is that what you're asking?
No, so like for example, was there anything in the book about the prophet? I'm sorry if I'm not making sense. It's just
Oh,
sometimes I have
oh
like
no,
a
no, no.
hundred
I think I
thoughts
get
sort
you
of coming
now.
in together. Okay, yeah.
Well, I think one really nice thing I read was like how the prophet, peace be upon him, he used to go and get solitude like in a cave, and
Mm,
sometimes he would be gone for like a long, long time, and his family would wonder like what's happening. But I mean, if you think about it, all that solitude in that cave, it's brought us like Muslims to where we are today in a sense. So solitude, like
mm. Because
it
he's
might
like
help
one of
you,
the
but
leaders
in
in
the
terms of Islam.
long term, well, kind of, yes, yes. So,
Mm,
like a messenger, you know? And if it
right.
wasn't for that solitude, I feel like you things would have not really made that much sense because imagine like to understand yourself better, you have to find solitude. You have to like just sit back and like make sense out of your thoughts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I totally agree. Um, because sometimes we can get sort of lost in the shuffle of all of our thoughts that we don't necessarily know where these thoughts are coming from. Again, you can take whatever I'm going to
Yes.
say now with a pinch of salt, if you will. This is for the listeners or the watchers, in that for me personally, like ever since I've started meditating, for the 8-ish months that I've been doing it, I feel like I notice my thought patterns a lot more. Um, because before, like if there was something that like if there was a certain stimulus that sort of hit me, I think there was an instant response. But like we mentioned earlier, I think ever since I've started meditating, like something's just changed where I'm able to um analyze why my thoughts are doing what they're doing, if that makes sense.
It does. I mean, yes, it does make sense. At least I know it makes sense to me, but yeah, like sometimes you don't know what's happened in your life and or you think like your life is a certain way, but then when you like sit back and like actually think about it, it kind of changes for you, like your perspective about how your life has been and or what it may be. Because what I've been doing lately is
Right.
like just sitting back and like thinking of like my past, my childhood for more like specific. But like I've been thinking of the small aesthetics that I like from my childhood, and like one of my favorites is like when I just sit in the garage and it would storm and I just like sit and watch the storm. Like I just start thinking of like how that day felt, like how it felt warm and I felt happy, and like coming back inside and my mom's like making roti and like you can smell it, and like all those little things. Like if you just sit back and get solitude and like think about all of those things, like you're like, wow, my life's actually not that bad, or it wasn't that bad, if you pay attention to those little things.
Hmm. Yeah, I think we do need to pay attention to those things because, um, like a lot of the times we tend to have this negativity bias. I might be getting the term wrong, but I think there is a psychological term associated with that in terms of our behavior towards looking at the negatives only compared to sort of fostering and sort of understanding the positives a
Would it
lot more.
be
We tend to look
pessimism?
at the negatives.
Hmm.
Good question. I think pessimism is more of an outlook, if that makes sense. Whereas a
More of an
negativity
outlook.
bias is probably your your way of perceiving thoughts, if that makes sense.
Oh, yes, yes, it
Or
makes
perceiving things
sense.
in general.
That actually reminds me,
Yeah.
yes, I read a story once about, or it's like a short story. It's like something like that would be posted on Facebook, or but it was
Mm-hmm.
about how two guys watched their father while growing up, and their father was like an alcoholic, and one of the kids grew up to be an alcoholic, the other grew up not to be one. And he asked like one of the brothers asked the other one, he's like, why are you like this? And he's like, I watch my father. And when the other guy was asked, why are you like this? Like, why does he not drink? He's like, well, I watch my father. Like, but they both grew up in the same house watching the same dad, but they had two different perspectives.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I
Yeah, that
feel
is
like
very
that
deep.
really did change my perspective about things. But
No, yeah, I can see why, because like you don't necessarily think about how you perceive things as much, I think. I might be wrong, um, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think a lot of the times we look at things as if they're happening to us rather than happening for us. I mean, again, in no way am I holier than thou. I've probably said this 100 times in other episodes too, but I think from what I've read recently and all those sort of things, I feel like we tend to get lost in a sense of feeling that all bad that's happening is happening to us rather than thinking about the fact that it might be for our betterment, like either in the sense that it's probably going to help you grow or it's probably going to help you see a certain thing in a different way. So I think it depends on that sense. It depends on how each person looks at it. But I mean, I'm not saying that I'm like 100% foolproof and this is how I look at everything. I've had moments where I'm like, why is this happening to me? Kind of thing. I've thought about that. Not that I haven't. You
and
can
they
call me
happen
a
to
hypocrite if you
everyone.
want, but but yeah, I think a lot of the times we sort of get lost um, in terms of
Hmm.
looking at things as if they're happening
And
to us.
I really like how you said that, like, sometimes we think that things are happening to us and not for us, because, like, hardships, they're actually blessings in disguise for people if you think about it, because they do help you grow, they do help you change, and they do make you stronger.
Hmm. Yeah, they do. Like I remember reading this tweet. It was a tweet actually that said that it was a tweet by this
Mhm.
nutritionist. Is that even a term? I don't know. Back in India, based in India. His
Yeah,
name
it
is
is,
Luke
I think.
Coutinho. And
Hmm.
yeah. So yeah, I remember him tweeting something like along those lines. I'll tag his Twitter account below if anybody is interested in following. He shares rather pretty interesting stuff about nutrition, about health, and even perspectives for that matter. So yeah, I read that tweet that he put out saying that we should look at things as if they're happening for us rather than looking at it as in the sense that they're happening to us. So yeah, I think going back to that story that you mentioned about the father and his two children, I think one of them probably looked at it
Hmm.
as a way of sort of not becoming his father, whereas the other one probably looked at
Hmm.
it as a way of, okay, this is my death sentence, not death sentence, but like this is the way my life is sentenced to be lived, sort of thing. I don't know if that makes sense.
It could be that, or what I also think it could be is that uh, one kid would just like focus on his dad when he'd drink, and the other kid would like focus on his dad when he'd be sober. So I think it's also that, but it could be anything.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. It could be many different things. It could be a combination of things, for all
Yeah,
that we know, But I
yeah.
think sort of like understanding those deeper layers of what could possibly be the reason. I think it's sort of intriguing in that sense, especially based off of the story that you just mentioned.
Yeah.
Where was it that you found that story?
I honestly cannot remember, but I think it was a post somewhere, like, or maybe I feel like maybe a teacher in my online high school, she probably had that up somewhere because I remember a lot of the stories that I had to read for high school. They were really like life-changing to me, it felt like.
Hmm, interesting.
So it must have been one of
What?
those.
Yeah. You said you like reading. I probably might have asked this question already, but what are some of your? I think you mentioned some other time that we were talking too that like you found books to be life changing or like they've added to your perspective in a way. So if you'd like to share,
Hmm.
like which one of those books is it that you read that sort of changed your perspective for the better? And maybe if you'd like to like mention maybe three things that you learned from that book, what would those three things be?
Okay. So one of the main books was 40 Rules of Love, and I think the main three things it changed for me was it made me less judgmental. It made me realize that, like, before in the past, I feel like I used to worry too much about what other people are doing, like, for themselves, you know? And I would think of it in a more, like, religious way. Like, I would think of how some people I know aren't that close to God, like, in my view. But I learned to change that. I'm like, I cannot control someone's relationship between them and God. And for all I know, like what I'm seeing and what I think to be is not a good relationship with for them between God, maybe to God it's a really good relationship, you know? So I have like no say in that. I can't judge. And another thing it probably changed for me was maybe like the idea of like a soulmate. Like in the book, Rumi and Shams, they felt like incomplete before they met each other. They felt like something or someone was missing from their life, so they started seeking it more. And when they found each other, they felt really happy and great, but everyone around them were kind of like disturbed and they were like kind of panicking in a sense. But like what that did for me is it made me more like open to like finding out what will happen in the future. Like the curiosity, it's been keeping me going for a while. And Like, you never know what's been written for you until it happens. So I'm excited to see that, even if it may feel like it's going badly or wrong. Like, I'm just happy that I don't know what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And then another thing, three things, wow. Um, three things. Okay. Another thing it changed for me is it made me realize how much I like reading because this is such a school type response, but yeah, it made me realize how much I like reading because when I was a younger kid, I used to read so much and just stay lost in books, but I hadn't done that for a long time. And then I read that book, and I'm like, oh yeah, I like reading. I remembered I like reading, so I started looking into more books.
Mm-hmm. I think sometimes you just need reminders of the things that we used to do in the past, and we tend to forget about
Yeah.
how influential those things were and how they helped us positively. And for you, that reminder was reading. And yeah, like I think we've all had that happen to us for different things, I'm sure. But yeah, I think you're not the only one in terms of experiencing that. I'm sure we've all experienced it differently, I'm sure, and realizing that, oh, I used to do this as a child. Why do I not do it anymore? Kind of thing. So yeah, I'm sure you're not alone. um, yeah, I'm sure you're not alone in that sense. But also, you mentioned something else really interesting that um, like has me thinking of a few questions. Based off of what you just said,
Mhm.
if I understood properly, you're someone that believes in the concept of soulmates. Is that correct?
Yes, yes, I do. Because it's been said that, like Islamically, I read that before we're like born in the world, we're in another place. And I don't know if I can say it right.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I'm right about this entirely, but I think it's called the Berzak. I hope I'm right. I really hope I'm right. But that's where all our souls were. And that's like if you had a good connection with someone there or some people there, because there can be multiple people you had a good connection with, and you come across them in this world, then you're going to get along great. Like there's going to be a strong affinity. I hope that's the right word. And
Yeah, yeah,
if your
yeah.
soul did not like to be with another soul over there, then in this world, you don't really like get along with them. But yeah, so I feel like that is true. And yeah, I feel like I haven't
Mm.
really experienced finding a soulmate yet. I mean, I tell my little sister that maybe the cat's my soulmate because I don't know, we like we vibe together, so and I don't know if you've seen this actually, but like on social media, have you ever seen like someone do the quote like and we were made in Paris or you were made in Paris? You know, like have you seen that? It's actually I think from the Quran,
No, I haven't. I haven't heard that.
but people
Um,
mostly mhm.
hmm Oh, you were
People
saying
mostly
people
like put
mostly?
that like on their engagement photos.
Gotcha. Okay, I don't think I've seen that, to be honest. But no, that's interesting. And another thing that I found interesting was what you said about there's people that we get along with, and there's people that we don't get along with. If our souls, or rather, like there's souls that we get along with, and there's souls that we don't get along with. So, like once we start living our lives on Earth, um, that same sort of relationship with souls is reflected. So if I'm like, correct me if I'm wrong, but is it that even the friends that we make or the people that we don't like in this life, is that sort of an influence, or can you also look at that as a principle being generated from the concept of soulmates?
Hold on, you're like lagging.
Oh, I was basically saying like
Could you repeat that,
the so
please?
basically the concept of soulmates. Yeah, I mean it's a bit laggy for some reason, but yeah, what I was saying was internet. Come on, internet. Anyway, um, the concept of soulmates seems to apply to more than just like a love partner, right? I mean that's what I understood. Am
Mm-hmm.
I looking at that right?
Yes, yes.
Hmm.
I believe
I
you
sort of
are
find that
because
fascinating.
what a lot of people, yeah, what a lot of people tend to do is they confuse a life partner with a soulmate. And a life partner is basically who you're romantically involved with and like stuck with, you know. Well, not stuck, but you know what I mean. And
Yeah,
then
yeah.
a soul a soulmate is someone that you meet in life who teaches you like lessons basically, and usually they tend to leave after you learn your lesson and you have this great connection, but I think if you're fortunate, they may become your life partner too. And it makes me wonder if like can someone who like you've met and they turn out not to be good for you and have like taught you a bunch of lessons. So even
Hmm.
though like they've been bad for you, could they still be your soulmate? Like is a soulmate supposed to be good, you know?
Interesting. Now that you mention that, yeah, like, cause I'm someone that also looks at things in a way that, oh, if I've met someone whom I'm not the biggest fan of, I still try to look at it as a way
Mhm.
of learning what I shouldn't do. Um, and if you're learning something from them based off of what you just said, like that sort of applies to the concept of soulmates, right? So yeah, I think that's an interesting question.
But yeah,
Yeah, I think that's a really
I
interesting
think
question.
like it's pretty cool. Yeah. What do you think? Do you think that's been bad for you, can they be your soulmate?
Maybe I think it comes down to how you would define a soulmate, right? Like, I'm not sure like how a soulmate was specifically defined where you read about this, but if a soulmate is someone who is just a part of your life in terms of how they influence your growth. I don't know why I did that in air quotes. For those of you
Mhm.
listening and not watching, I just said growth in air quotes. Anyway, forget my antics. If a soulmate is someone who helps you grow, then I think that even if it's someone that's not necessarily the person you have a relationship with, be it like in a sense of being a friend or being a life partner or whatever, I think they still count, right, as a soulmate because you're learning something from them.
Maybe. And then it makes me wonder, like,
But that's just my take.
can you have it makes me wonder, like, if you can have more than one soulmate, because I know that, like, you can learn a lesson from a lot of people, and there's a few people in your life that you will meet that will have a big importance in your life. So it's hard to like think like if I were to think if I've met my soulmate, it makes me wonder like there's multiple people in my life who I had a good connection with and who I learned a lot from and who I felt like different with. Like, could it be possible that like they were my soulmates? Like, is it possible that there can be more than one? Or maybe I just haven't like discovered this one soulmate yet, and that's why I feel like there's been multiple ones in my life.
Um, this is just a thought that popped up in my head when you said that.
Yeah.
Do you think soulmates could be looked at as some sort of outgrowth of farishte, or farishte meaning
Angels?
fairies, angels. Yeah,
Angels?
sorry, angels. Yeah.
I don't think you can be a soulmate with an angel. I mean, that would be pretty cool, I guess, if you could be. Because angels, I think, are something entirely different.
Hmm. I think I was looking at it from a sense of, okay, if these angels are things or entities that sort of teach you things,
Mm-hmm.
then wouldn't you think that anybody who's teaching you something is
A
an
soulmate.
angel or is a soulmate?
And that would make your professor or teacher a soulmate.
True, true.
And
Even
I
if I
don't I
don't
don't
like
feel
them.
comfortable, yeah. Don't feel comfortable with that idea. No offense
Fair
if
enough, fair
any
enough.
professors or teachers are listening.
No, yeah, no offense to y'all at all. Like, y'all definitely teach us something.
Yeah,
I didn't mean that condescendingly. I don't know why. I think I felt like it might have come across
oh
slightly
no.
condescendingly.
Well,
But no, we definitely learned from them.
yeah.
Yeah.
I guess maybe later on in life, like when you're 80 and just looking back at your childhood, which is now, maybe then you're
Hmm.
gonna be like, yeah, that was my soulmate. Like maybe we'll just figure out later. So it's like we're
Mhm.
just so unaware right now. We're just going with it.
Yeah, I've never thought about it that way. This is intriguing. It's very yeah, it's just very intriguing. Like the whole concept of soulmates and sort of like how one could look at soulmates as just people around you rather than them being a life partner, or vice versa. It's very interesting. Like I find stuff like this very fascinating because a sense of it is also associated to spiritual growth, but it's also associated to the way that we live our everyday life. So
hmm
yeah, yeah, that's very interesting in a lot of ways.
Well, what do you think? Do you think that like our body is a vehicle for our soul? Because I know a lot of people actually think that, and I think so too, but like I just want to know what you think.
I think so too. I mean, based off of what I've read, um, and I might have mentioned this already, but I'm nowhere near entirely understanding the Bhagavad Gita. But based off of what I read on there, it said that the body is sort of like the vehicle to your soul. So, like, if the your body is basically like a dress that the soul wears to sort of take on this path. Um, so yeah, like it's
And
just
I feel like our conscious or like our brain completely different than our soul because I read that like when you fall asleep every night, your soul basically leaves the body and uh you meet other souls or like you go in this other place and that's why you get dreams and stuff. But I like how sometimes you just forget your dreams. So I wonder like when it's just our soul, like when we pass away and it's simply just our soul and not like our brain or our thoughts or anything, will we remember all those forgotten dreams or you know?
yeah, I see what you're saying. It's very deep and it's very fascinating. I kind of like this stuff in
Yeah.
terms of like just the sort of breadth of understanding everything, but also like I think I don't know if you've ever heard stories like this, but there might have been a movie or two about this too. I'm not quite
Oh,
sure, but I remember reading somewhere like an article of a 7-year old. Again, I might be getting this wrong, but a young kid basically going back to the place that he used to live in his previous life and sort of recognizing that place. So, yeah, that reading that or hearing about that just sort of blew my mind in the sense that you're like, oh, wow, like if that's a possibility, like, can you actually remember everything that happens in your life, in your future life?
it
I
makes
don't
me
know.
wonder like, and what are deja vus, you know? Like,
Hmm.
what if your soul has to do with that? So crazy to think about.
Hey, I think we're both curious about topics like that, and I think a lot of people are,
Yeah.
because it's very intriguing. So maybe there's things that we could find to read that might probably help develop our understanding about this a little more. If any of the listeners or watchers have any recommendations, feel free to share those in the comments or in your reviews. But yeah, like I think it's very interesting, like the idea of you carrying your memories in your future life, because based off of the concept of, like, if you will, karma, um and for those of you out there, I guess this is a bit of a pet peeve of mine. Whenever I hear people say karma, it just sort of grinds my gears. I'm like, it's not karma, it's karma, not karma. But anyway, I guess that's an argument for another day. um you know it's just that, again, based off of my understanding, um karma is something that can be very microscopic, in the sense that it can also be the karma of your thoughts. Like, I was listening to a podcast. I can tag that podcast below. It's someone whom I follow a lot. His name is Ranveer Bhatia. He has this YouTube channel called Beer Biceps, and he has a great podcast. He talks about a lot of spiritual stuff, entrepreneurial stuff, and etc. etc. But I'm going to tag that below if anybody is interested. Anyway, he was talking about how even our thoughts how our thoughts also have karma. Or I said it the way I don't like people saying it. Great.
You're your own enemy.
Right, I am. I am. I am. Oh God, I'm such a hypocrite. Anyway,
If you were an animal, you'd be a
um,
hypocrite. Oh, okay, that was a really lame joke.
no, I like it. I
Insert
like it. Oh God. Yeah, I guess I was a hypocrite.
No.
Wow. Oh, the puns. I mean, I like puns a lot. I find them really funny. But before we just
Yeah.
veer into puns, I just wanted to say real quick, like, the microaggression of, like, thoughts that we have. Like, for example, if you and I are having this conversation, just as an example, and I'm sitting here with sort of some sense of negative energy towards you, that can also contribute towards your karma. And all of those things, like, again, based off of my reading of the book, can sort of alter your progress towards reaching the highest sort of levels of spirituality, if you will. um, and I think it's something that you learn along the way. It's not I don't think it's something that you reach in one lifetime, if I was to put it that way. I think you have to sort of live multiple lifetimes to sort of understand those things, and you inch closer and closer the more you grow. I guess, like, if I can put it that way. So yeah, I think, like, our actions have a role to play. Like, if you look at it very microscopically, our actions in this lifetime have a role to play in how our next lifetime will be, if that makes sense.
It makes sense, yeah.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people, they think about like the next life, or for us, like we think about the afterlife, and we think of how everything like in this world, it's temporary. So you have to be careful, like with the choices you make and everything, because in the long term, in the afterlife, it's gonna be like the outcome, like the outcome will be from the actions from this world. And like even everything like in this world that may seem to give you like happiness or feel good, or like the pleasures of this world, they may not be so good for like the next life or for the afterlife.
Yeah. 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 I think all of those things are very fascinating to sort of talk about, because,
Yeah.
like, Because a part of me, okay, I guess this is an internal debate that I've had in solitude. I guess I'm like, if you look at it very microscopically, you're probably being a little too over analytical about what you're doing. Um, while you can be good, or I mean, being or analyzing your own activity can be good, it can also be bad if your thoughts are irrational, or like sort of the conclusions you're drawing are irrational. So like sitting down and constantly thinking about every single thing you do being good or bad, I feel like can have an impact on your mental health overall, because then you're sort of just judging yourself for everything that you do. um, so I think even the bad can be of mask, or even good can be masked by something. Wait, what am I trying to say?
I
The
think I know
mad
what
can
you're
be
trying to
masked by the
say.
good. There we go.
Yes,
In a
yeah.
sense that, right, like, because even if you do something bad,
Yeah,
you learn from it, and that helps you sort of progress on becoming or doing good. Um,
and
so yeah, I
since you
think I think
mentioned
that
that,
whole sort of idea, that whole concept is just interesting.
it makes me
Oh,
think
go
of
ahead.
how we tend to find familiarity. Dude, I cannot talk today, or in other days too. But
It's okay.
familiarity. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Mm,
Like, what feels
yeah.
okay, here, I'll just say it like this. What feels familiar to us, it's not always going to be good for us. We tend to find comfort in things that feel familiar, and for growth, like, we obviously need change. So we're going to feel really unfamiliar and like uncomfortable with like change, and we'll want to always go back to what felt good. But for us, that good may not be so good for us. It might be bad.
Hmm. Yeah. So like basically, I think even if you were to overanalyze, I don't think it would get you. Yeah, it would get you anywhere. I think rather the better thing would be do the better. I can't talk either. The better thing
Oh
to
no.
do. Things happen. Yeah, the better thing to do, I think, would be to sort of go in with good intentions.
Hmm.
Because I think at the end of the day, that's what matters, right? Is your intention towards what you're trying to do. Because
Hmm.
um, again, I was reading this in the Gita. It was talking about charity and the concept of charity, in the sense that even if you're like, charity can be good or bad too, in the sense that if you're giving charity to a cause that is helping you build knowledge, or helping you seek the higher planets, or helping you seek a higher level of spiritual growth, great. But if you're giving charity to a thing that's very self-deprecating, in the sense that you're giving money to someone to go and drink more alcohol, then that's bad charity kind of thing. So I think in those things, in either of those two things, I think intentions play a role. Like, because if you notice that that money that you're going to give as charity is going to go to the wrong place, you sort of pull the plug and don't do it, I guess. I don't know if that
I
makes
guess you
sense,
should
but
just look more into what you're investing into. You need to like look into the cause and
right.
use your own judgment too.
Right. Exactly. And even if you've made a mistake, I think it's okay, because like you make
Yeah.
mistakes to learn from them, I guess. Um,
Yeah,
so
the
yeah, I
biggest
think,
mistake is to not learn from the previous mistake. That's the only
right.
mistake.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So it's very, it can just tie you up in a knot, being like, if you overanalyze like every single aspect of your karma, going back to what we were just like mentioning earlier. I think that's what I was trying to get at, is that,
Yeah.
yeah, while like we should try and use or try and do good karma, do good things, even that can be subjective sometimes. So even if you've done something bad, like, I guess, fine, like pick it up and move on and
Hmm.
try to do it better
Move
next
on.
time, I guess. Yeah. I mean, it's a
But
lesson that applies to me, and it applies for everybody else too. Again, like I said earlier, I've probably said this enough. I don't know why sometimes I feel like, well, let me finish the earlier thought first. Okay. Because there's too many things just sort of trying to come out of my mouth. Um, but yeah, like in no way am I like sort of entirely there. I'm still figuring things out myself too. Um, but yeah, this is probably going to be like the last question I ask you before we transition into the last quarter of the podcast. But basically, like I tweeted this earlier today on the day of recording, of like, and I think you retweeted this or you saw or you liked. I can't remember what it was, but it was something along the
I
lines
think I
of questioning
retweeted.
the profound, yeah, like questioning the profound thoughts that we have. In the sense that I sometimes think like, why am I sounding like way too old for what I'm saying? Or like why where is this coming from and all those kind of questions. Do you experience that yourself? Because you also like based off this conversation, we've talked about very deep stuff. So like based off of that, do you think like you experience or you have those moments yourself?
Yeah, I do a lot, and I feel like that's why I also sleep late because, like, in the nighttime, you don't have anything to do. Like, you have so much free time, and I use that free time just like
Mm,
wondering stuff like that. I'm like, but I think it's normal, like, for everyone to think like that at some point in their life or even daily. But
because I just, yeah, like I don't know, a part of me sort of, I mean, and again, no judgment here or anything like that. A part of me is just like, should I be enjoying things a little more rather than being too like analytical about stuff? But then at the same time, I think I pull myself back and I'm like, this is how I seek happiness, if you will. So like,
I think
even if I was to try and enjoy, yeah,
as
please go
long
ahead.
as if you don't let judgment get in the way of being over analyzing, there I'll just say that.
Hmm.
But as long as you're not like putting in too much judgment in that and you're just like looking at it with a fresh like slate, then I think it's
Mm.
okay if you over analyze because it just makes you like,
Yeah, yeah,
look at the little details.
right, right. Because sometimes the little details matter.
Yeah.
Um, and sometimes those little details are hidden under a veil of dust or a layer of dust. So sometimes you need to do some house cleaning to sort of get to that layer. But I think getting to those layers is a good thing. But at the same time, I don't know, maybe it's just some sense of self doubt, possibly, that also leads me or also leads us to sort of question some of the things that we do or some of the thoughts that we have. Um, but yeah, I guess that's an entire another conversation for another day. We're going to
Mm,
transition into the last leg of this podcast, starting off with the segment Bish Bash Bosh. And for
okay.
those of the listeners or watchers who don't know, Bish Bash Bosh is a segment where I give the guests 5 words, and they have to respond to those 5 words in either 3 words or three phrases. For example, if I was to use the word solitude, what are the 3 things that come to Najmus's mind would be what she would say. Well, I can't look into her mind, but I guess that sort of gives the example of what I'm trying to say. Does that make sense to you?
It does. I also had a question actually. Whenever I look at the other Bish Bash Bosh videos, I used to wonder
Hmm.
like, is there a time limit for these things?
So no, there isn't. There isn't a time
Okay,
limit.
okay.
Um, yeah. Usually, I try and like have the guests say the first things that come to their mind rather than try and think for the right answer, if
Yeah,
that
yeah,
makes sense.
it does.
So yeah, there is no time limit per se, but whatever shoots out of your mind first, go for it. You don't need to sort of.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, I guess you could keep it PG. I mean, you've been keeping it PG. I'm not worried about you
Yeah.
keeping it PG. But yeah, as long as it's PG and PC, we're fine.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, you ready?
Yes, I am pretty ready, yeah.
Okay, cool. So the first word is differences. What are the three things that come to your mind when I say the word differences?
Differences, it would be acceptance of people and thoughts.
Cool.
Does that make
What are the
that
three things that come to your mind? Yeah, what are the three things that would come to your mind when I was to say the word nuance?
nuance? Oh no, I
Hmm.
am not that articulate. I would think of Google searching dictionary.
I like that response. I've not gotten that response at all. Uh,
I don't
I
know why.
appreciate you saying
Yeah, I was in a spelling bee too, and I had to learn a bunch of words, but, like, I'm not very articulate.
that. It's all good. No worries. No worries. I like you saying that. But the word nuance basically means like that there's gray. It's not all black and white. There's like a lot of gray in between. Um, so yeah, that's what nuance basically means. Um,
Mhm.
so yeah, now that I say that, do you have some other things coming into your mind?
Um, it would be probably acceptance, curiosity, and hidden. I hope
Nice.
I
I like it.
I hope I understand the words the way you're saying, like
No, no, no. It's okay. It's totally fine. It's totally fine. Yeah. The third word is learning. What comes to your mind when I say the word learning?
learning would be teaching, knowledge, and wisdom.
Teaching, knowledge, and wisdom. I like it. The fourth word would be empathy. What comes to your mind when I say the word empathy?
Empathy would be care, listening, and love.
Beautiful. And the last word for this round of Fish Bash Bosh would be similarities. What comes to your mind when I say the word similarities?
Differences, um, acceptance. I think I said that one before. And perspective. I probably said that one before
I
too.
like
I,
it.
I can't remember. It's like really random.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, we're
Mm.
on Perspective Platoon with Prateek, so perspective, I'll take it. Yeah. Anyway, thank you for answering those words and playing along for this round of Fish Bash Bosh. Um, for the last few or the last two questions, well, the last one's not really a question. I probably need to stop saying that. But for the penultimate question, if you will, um, how do you find ways to relate to people?
Um, well, I try to listen to them. Listening is a big thing. I had to learn to be a better listener because I feel like in the past I used to like talk way more and zone out, like when other people would talk. But I've been trying to listen more and listening, it's more about like also looking at their facial expressions too when they talk. It can't just be words. You have to actually like look at them when they're talking. So
Hmm.
it would be that. And I think just trying to let go of judgment, like whatever they're going through, you may not like relate with them, but to understand them better, you just have to kind of let go of that judgment and think of like how they see things.
Hmm. Right. Just to sort of expand, if you don't mind, this is probably going to be like a sub question to the penultimate question.
Okay.
Um, you said you had to become a better listener,
hmm
and like it took you some time. What were some things that you had to do to sort of become a better listener? Maybe I could take a few pointers myself.
Well, I think you're a pretty good listener. I mean, you have a podcast going on, so uh,
No, but I do
um,
feel like sometimes I sort of get overbearing with my thoughts. But anyway, you go ahead.
you have to, I think, mainly see people as people. Like, you have to think of like how they have their own life, they have their own things going on. Just become like more curious about what they're talking about and like wonder like what they may be feeling or what they may be thinking. And that helps a lot, like if you want to become a better listener. And it's like reprogramming your brain to find things interesting, because in the past I used to lose interest a lot in many things, like even in hobbies and stuff. But as long as you can like just, even if you fake or like pretend that you're interested, eventually you do get interested, because your brain
Hmm.
starts making up questions, and to get those questions you have to listen and learn.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, I agree 100%. 100%. I guess another sub question. I guess this is just a curiosity that's coming through right now. But you mentioned the word being curious, and we've spoken about this before. What helps you stay curious?
What helps me stay curious is the fact that I don't know like what's going to happen. And like what helps me stay curious, I guess, like that's actually a question like I didn't think about in that sense. Like I keep feeling like curiosity is what keeps me going, not like what keeps me curious, if that makes sense.
No,
But
that does make sense. Yeah.
but yeah, how do I stay curious? Wow, never thought of that. I guess wanting to live, like finding a reason for life, and like being curious, like that helps me stay curious. Like just wanting to find like the importance of life and like look forward
Hmm.
to things. I know patience, you need a lot of patience too if you're going to be curious, but
Hmm. I like
yeah.
that. That's very deep. That's very deep. Um, like, because a lot of the times, like you said earlier, sometimes we can tend to lose interest in conversations that we are having. And that could be just a lack of curiosity, or it could be many different things like the lack of focus, or so on and so forth. We're not here to debate which one it is or whatever. But yeah, in terms of curiosity, I think it definitely helps in sort of like looking at it the way that you look at it, because I think that just helps you understand that there's a lot more to learn in this life. And you can only, or one of the things that will help you be open to learning is staying curious. So
Mhm.
I think that all ties in together. So I appreciate the way that you answered that question. And thank you for bearing with my sub question on sub
No
question.
worries, it was really fun.
Cool. But before we go, the last request that I tend to call a question. Yeah, I should definitely like take a note and be like, stop calling it a question. It's a request. So yeah, basically, just a final request from you. Um, Share with the people a positive thought or a positive quote or whatever you feel would
Positive.
be a positive thing to share. Yeah.
I mean, right now when you say positive, I think of like Corona, so please don't stay positive in that way. But
Yeah, please don't.
um, well, let me think actually. I guess like one thing about positivity is that don't question things too much. Don't question like why something may have happened. Like just learn to go with it and learn from it. And I mean,
Mm.
that kind of helps, I guess, with positivity. I don't know.
Yeah, like it does. Like in the sense of go with the flow and don't be
Yeah.
too over analytical of the things that are happening to you. Look at them as a way of them happening for you.
Mm.
Hey, we're
I
tying
actually know a
everything
quote.
back together again.
I know one quote. You
Yeah,
need a little rain for a rainbow.
I like that. That is very
Mhm.
beautiful. Yeah, that is great. You need a little rain for a rainbow. Yeah, I'll take that 100%. And on that note, thank you so much, Najmus, for joining me. I know we've had a few difficulties in terms of the lag issue, but I think we've had a great conversation and a really deep conversation that, I don't think we tend to think about as much. And that's something that I try to do. Like, we've had quite a few guests talk about topics like this. So I appreciate you wanting to come on and wanting to share your perspective on all of this, all the stuff that we've spoken about. And
No,
so
thank you for
thank you so
having
much.
me.
No, yeah, I'm happy to have you on. Thank you so much for coming on. Um, and for those of you who are listening and watching, thank you so much. And we'll see you guys next time. Thank you for watching this episode of Perspective Platoon with Prateek. Make sure to follow Najmus on her social media accounts and mention in the comment section below some of the things that you found interesting or intriguing about this conversation. Make sure to also check the description box for other sources of information and content that we've discussed about today. Like this video, share it around, and subscribe to Random Relatability and follow my pages on all social media platforms. Once again, thank you so much for watching this episode in its entirety. I really appreciate you joining in on the conversation. Until next time, stay safe, take care, and don't forget to keep your mind open to different perspectives, because you never know, random relatability might just be around the corner.